Hi there, welcome to the A to Z YouTube channel. I'm Toby Allen, I'm the A in A to Z, and I'm in charge of songwriting, producing and engineering. Now today I want to talk about what went into the engineering of our Duality cover last weekend, and just kind of run through all the bits and pieces that were included, because it was our first video on the channel where it was a full band, including vocals, and everything was live instruments. So a lot of the videos we've done so far have been like programmed bass or programmed drums or no vocals. So it's kind of special, and I wanted to go through what went into that. So I've color coded the tracks on here just to make things a little bit more simple. We've got these blue ones here are the kicks, the yellow ones here are the snare, and these yellow ones here are also snare as well. Green are the toms, orange are the overheads. Then we've got these blue ones here which are for the kegs. And then the rest isn't quite so color-coded, but we'll run through everything we've got here. So the drums were actually recorded just over 2 years ago at a local rehearsal space. I took my mobile rig with me, so we took a laptop and an interface and an expander. So we had 16 inputs. And the drummer took his snare and his cymbals, and we used the house kit at the rehearsal space, which you saw little clips of in the video last week. Now, I took my own microphones as well. Here, I don't have a drum room or live room for recording drums. Probably could squeeze a drum kit in here in this room, but it would be quite tight. But so when it comes to recording live drums, what I actually do is have a mobile rig that I take with me to a rehearsal space, or we can go to a studio that has a live room. But you know, that rehearsal room that we used there, I was pretty pleased with how the drums sounded, and Ruben got them sounding really good in the mix. So just run through what we used. So for the kick in, I used a pod mic. That sounds like this. For the kick out, I used a very, very cheap, I think it was Pronomics condenser mic, which sounds like this. I actually picked up a lot of the other shells as well as the kick. There's almost like a trash mic. For the snare top, I actually used two mics, so you can see in the video, but I scratched one of those because there was just so much bleed in the Slate ML2 that it just really wasn't usable. So we just stuck with it, a good old trusty SM57, which sounds like this. And snare bottom, which is an AKG P4. Now, when preparing the session to send over to Ruben, I added in some samples. We've got this one here. That's I made that from a TCI. That comes included with GGD Invasion, and that is actually a Joey Jordison snare. So I thought, you know, we're doing a Slipknot cover. It's got to be a Joey Jordison snare, isn't it? Then the other snare we've got here is this one, which is from the Bogren Digital Crim kit, which sounds absolutely brilliant. And then we've got the toms. Let's go over to here where we can hear Tom 1. These were recorded with SM58s, which is a very unusual choice of microphone for toms, but at the time, it was the only microphone I had 3 of. So it was kind of, well, there's 3 toms, I want the same microphone, all 3. These are the only ones I have 3 of, so let's use these. But I think they come out pretty well. So Tom 1 sounds like this. Tom 2 sounds like this, and Tom 3 sounds like this. So, you know, I was really pleased with how those come out. Then we've got the overheads, which I did a spaced pair. It turns out that someone actually hit one of the mic stands between setting up and recording. Might have been me, might have been the drummer, not sure. But it basically made the snare pull way over to the left in the overheads, and the right hand overhead was out of phase. So I had to do a lot of messing around with auto align and some width tools and things to try and actually fix that and make it so the snare is more central than it was, and to make it so everything's more in phase. But I use a pair of Cascade M39s, which are small diaphragm condensers. Sound like this. when I did the samples for the snares, I also included the overhead samples. So we've got an overhead sample of the Joey Jordison snare, and an overhead sample of the Bogren Digital snare. Then we've got the room. The rooms now, I used very cheap microphones from Gear for Music. I don't even know what they were called, but several years ago, I bought one of those really cheap, like £100 drum kit microphone sets. And there's a pair of small diaphragm condensers, which are supposed to be for overheads, but I'll use them for rooms for this. I've since got rid of those, and actually now I'd probably use a pair of Aston Element microphones, which sound really good. And would just sound really nice for rooms. So what I used sounds like this. Pretty pleased with how that came out, actually, for a pair of really crappy microphones. And then we included samples again from the GGD and Bogren TCI pack, so it includes some room samples as well. So we've got this one, which is the Joey Room, and then the Bogren Room. So when you put those room samples in with the actual room, so this is the room. You can hear it just adds that room sample into there. So if we listen to the drums as they are, no processing, sounds like this. So of course the first thing that I did when building this session is to edit the drums. With this kind of song, I didn't want to go like 100% on the grid like I would sometimes with some genres, but this was kind of a bit more loose. So that was very important. And the next thing along, we had some keg samples provided by Kiko. So this is from the new True North Audio keg pack. There'll be a link in the description below. So he provided, these ones are very roomy. So we've got this one which he called Sober, which is just the raw room sounds. And then this one which he called Keg Drunk, which is a bunch of reverb baked into it. I wanted a tiny bit more punch, a tiny bit more attack on the transient, so I added in a sample from my keg pack, which sounds like this. So when you put those together, it sounds like this. So you've got that big room sound, but you've still got that attack of the smaller keg, which I recorded. Then we had the bass provided for us by Max. Did a great job, especially seeing as it was so last minute, which was really good. His bass playing is fantastic. I don't think I had to do any editing on this. It just sounded really great straight off. So here's the DI on its own. And I ran that through a rat pedal into my Randall bass amp and mic'd up with a 57 and with a pod mic. This is what the 57 sounds like. And this is what the pod mic sounds like. And when we do a video from Ruben's point of view, we'll see how he blended those two together. So then we come to the DIs. These might be a little bit confusing in terms of the way that they're laid out. Basically, I recorded a lot of the guitars, and Jake recorded a lot of the guitars as well. Jake provided us with one side, but on this I wanted a quad track just to kind of make it thicker and bigger. So what we did is, for Jake's parts, I put them here, and there's a gap on this track here wherever Jake was playing, so that we've then got one on the left, one on the right. And you see here Jake playing, and there. So there's other than the kind of affected parts, like at the start of the verses and things. There's 4 guitars happening. Basically what we've got is Jake's part, and the L1 and R1 parts are all Mick's parts, and the L2 and R2 are Jim's parts. And what I did is I actually used a slightly different tone. I used the same guitar on all of those. I recorded with my Jeff Loomis 7-string, which is my favorite guitar. I just basically tuned it to B standard. This song is in drop B, but a lot of it is played on the bottom string, so I just played in B standard, and that was absolutely fine. Though I'll just show you the DI of the Jeff Loomis guitar. It sounds like this. Great, I love the pickups on that. It's EMG 57 7H in the bridge. The Mick tone sounds like this. Which was, I ran into the PodXT, and then from the PodXT, I ran into the Spider valve effects loop. So the Spider valve is an unusual kind of amp because it's a hybrid, but most hybrid amps you have a valve in the preamp and then a solid state power amp. But the Line 6 is actually a digital preamp that goes into a valve power amp. There's also a valve at the end of the preamp section just to add some kind of valve saturation to the digital sound, but you have an effects return which comes in before that valve at the end of the preamp section. So what that means is I can run the PodXT into the effects loop return, which effectively replaces the digital part of the Spider amp with a different digital preamp. So that means I've got more versatility because you've only got a limited number of amp models in the Spider valve, whereas the PodXT has got tons. So what I used on this one was a one from the Metal Shop pack called Big Bottom, which is based on a Rivera blended with a Mesa triple rectifier. Now, Slipknot were using Rivera amps around this time live that this original song came out, so I thought I'll go with that and try it. So that's what we have here. We have in the PodXT there is a Tube Screamer model going into the Big Bottom model, which then goes into the Spider valve, receives some saturation from the 12AX7 preamp valves, which then goes into the 6L6 power amp valves, adding more saturation. And that also allows me to add some presence into the power amp as well, because in a valve amp you have a feedback loop which is controlled with the presence, and basically that adds a lot of high end into the sound, into the tone. So what I found with digital preamps is they tend to sound quite fizzy in the high end, so I cut the presence and the treble on the pod and then add that back in the power amp stage of the Spider valve, which then adds kind of more smooth, more organic sounding high end, which then works in this sort of tone. That then went into a load box and went into the new GGD Goldstack IR pack. So that's Greenbacks, which is my favorite speaker. So that sounded, I was really happy with that, how that sounded. So then we've got, using the same guitar for the Jim parts, that went into the Plumes, and then into Orange Dark Terror. That then went into the effects return of the EVH. The reason I did that is because the Dark Terror only has a shape control. It doesn't have a full EQ. So I wanted to add more thickness in the low end and a little bit more brightness. So I was able to control it with the presence and the resonance dials on the EVH. And again, that went into my load box, and this time it went with GGD Zilla. And that's a couple of creambacks with SM57s on. And that's my favorite preset in that pack. And on its own, it sounds like this. So if you compare the two different amps with the 4 guitar parts, it sounds like this. Which I think is good because you've got the kind of more scoopy kind of sound of the Mick tone with the more mid-focus tone of the Jim tone. So together, fills the sound out quite nicely. What I did on this part as well, because it's very staccato with the parts here, I actually went in and manually gated between the notes here, and then actually manually gated after reamping as well, to make it sort of really cut, and no noise in between, no string noise when on the muting as well. So then after that, we have, I guess you could say this is the one instrument which wasn't played live, which is the piano. Now that's just a piano sample from the East-West pack. I think it was Steinberg. And then lastly, we got the vocals. So we got the several tracks here from Taylor. There's a couple of double parts. Now the choruses, he didn't provide doubles. So what I did was basically copied and pasted parts from different choruses, put them together to create a false dub. Used Vocaline to then line them up so they're all in time. So let's hear the part of the chorus with just the one vocal. Sounds like this. It's the only thing. And then the other one added in. It's the only thing. Just, it gives you a bigger sound. It's quite common to do that, particularly in choruses, to double the vocals to make them sound bigger. I like to make sure they're very well aligned so that they're not distracting. But we'll find out when it comes to Ruben's mix how much of that actually stayed in, because it's quite a dry, the original song was very dry sounding. There's not very much in the way of sort of room sounds or reverb sounds or any kind of effects like that. So it's not necessarily going to be the kind of song that's going to lend itself towards having doubles in it. So we'll see how much of that was included, but I wanted to include that as an option so it was there for Ruben to use if need be. And that is it. So that's everything that went into that. It's not a huge number of tracks in this one. There's not a huge amount of post-production. There's no lead guitars or anything, so it's just the 4 guitar parts for a quad-tracked version. I think the original was dual-tracked. Didn't sound like it had as many guitars as we did, but I'm just a bit of a sucker for quad-tracking, so I wanted to include that in this one. And if you found that interesting, then definitely give us a like and a subscribe. Also, we're considering in the future sharing our multi-tracks like this so that you can put these into your DAW and have a play and see what goes on behind the scenes on our recordings. If that's the sort of thing you think you'd be interested in having a play with in the future, then comment below and tell us, because if we get enough interest, that's something that we will start to pursue and include. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.